Hello, this is Hollisa Alewine. Welcome back to our study in the 7 Abominations of the Wicked Lamp. And we are going to finish up the 7th seal today. Are you excited? I hope so. We're excited because we want to get over into the trumpets in the next program. We're just kind of, tying the shoelaces on these 7 seals. And again, in the last program, we just stopped and we wanted to review these 4 horses as they ride out and the seals open. I wanted to revisit the black horse. And the reason I want to revisit the black horse is because we are going through a period right now of, for certain, a plague. We're going through a period of economic uncertainty, and that's for certain. We are going through uncertainty. Supply chains are disrupted. The price of goods is going up. How far it will go, we have no way of knowing at this point. But I think if we understand the principles that are taught by these 4 horses, and especially this black horse in this situation, as it concerns our economic system, then we can be encouraged, not because things are going to go back to the way they always were, or they're going to be better than they always were, but we are going to prepare ourselves for nothing to ever be as it was before again. Because when we look at the footsteps of Messiah and how we prepare for them, one of the patterns we looked at in the last program was the parable of the vineyard and the pay for the laborers, that those who were hired, at the first hour, they got a denarius, and those who worked an hour, they got a denarius, they got a day's bread, because the denarius would buy what the average man would eat in one day. So it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not a add to my 401k sort of plan. It's a survival plan. And in the Targum to the Song of Songs, there's a commentary. Remember, in Judaism, they see more than one Messiah. Their traditional way of looking at things is that there would be a Mashiach bar Ephraim. He's also called Ben Yosef, kind of the same entity in terms of the work that is expected to be done. And then they see a Mashiach ben David, or Messiah, son of David. And they assign particular tasks that they believe, based on scriptures, that each would do. That Mashiach ben Yosef is going to be responsible for gathering the tribes and for battling against Gog at the gates of Jerusalem. And of course, Mashiach ben David, he's going to rule and reign for 1,000 years. They don't necessarily see these as one entity. Of course we do. We see Yeshua in both of them. But their comments concerning the work of these 2 messiahs, I think, can help us understand, again, what the black horse is all about. They write, 2 deliverers shall there be to deliver you, Messiah bar David and Messiah bar Ephraim, who were like to Moses and Aaron, the sons of Yocheved. And they fed the people of the house of Israel in their righteousness 40 years in the wilderness, with manna and with fat fowls and with the waters of the well of Miriam. And so from this, they derive an expectation of Messiah. And this is where they're kind of getting 2 messiahs. But their expectation of Messiah is that he would be like Moses and Aaron, that he would miraculously provide food and drink for Israel. Well, let's think of the miracles that Yeshua performed. He could multiply the bread. He could multiply the fish. At Sukkot, on the last great day of Sukkot, he stands up and says he's the source of living water. And so with this proclamation, we can, again, go back to the last program where we used Joseph's instructions, like, don't worry about the property you're leaving behind. I'm going to give you the best of everything. And then we saw how at least the sages are saying long term, the best of everything out of Egypt was the children of Israel. They were the ones delivered in the Exodus out of Egypt, and they did return to their inheritance. They did return to their property. And so it's prophesying again of the descendants of Abraham, that the best of everything is going to come out of the nations. The best of everything is going to come out of the exile, and they are going to inherit their land again. And so as a pattern, because the reason we're tying Messiah into this is because Yeshua said, I am the bread of heaven. He's saying, I'm the manna. I was the word from heaven. And the people really didn't discern what they were picking up every day when they picked up their bread. They didn't see him in that living bread from heaven. But the manna is a great lesson. It's a great object lesson in the principle of this black horse who's saying, it's all the same price. Daily bread is all this is. Exodus 16:16 says, this is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone gather as much as he will eat. You shall take an omer apiece according to the number of the people each of you has in his tent. Everybody gets exactly the same amount. The sons of Israel did so, and some gathered much, and some little. When they measured it by the omer, the one who had gathered much did not have too much, and the one who had gathered little did not have too little. Everyone gathered as much as he would eat. Moses said to them, no one is to leave any of it until morning. In other words, you don't need a pantry, maybe a lunchbox, but you don't need a pantry, you don't need a refrigerator, you don't need a barn, you don't need any of those things. The collection number, remember, was according to the number of people in the tent. And even though they had different appetites, miraculously, the measure for each person is the same. It's an omer, one omer. It makes you think even of the Passover lamb, where he's saying, you're going to eat this lamb in preparation for the Exodus. I'm going to bring you out. You are the best things of Egypt, and I'm about to take you out of Egypt. But he says, when you eat this lamb, share it among yourselves so that there's nothing left over until the morning. This is a shared sacrifice. And so everybody has to share in it. And if this denarius could only purchase as much as one person could eat in a day, then there might be people who ate more than other people. We see the comparison with the black horse of the barley and the wheat. You could get 3 quarts of wheat for a denarius, or 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but 1 quart of wheat. But with this principle that you all get as much as you can eat in a day, there's no reason to envy. There's no reason to look at what your brother or sister has collected and be envious of it as if it is more, because it really isn't. It's not more than they can eat in a day. What's interesting here is that it's a 3-to-1 ratio with the barley and wheat. Barley in biblical times was considered animal food. Even though they would make loaves of barley, especially if they were poor, the poor people depended more upon barley because it was cheaper. You could get more for your denarius. It represented the animal to them. It was symbolic of the animal. And so you can see the principle of envy that was associated with the barley. The woman accused of adultery, she would have to bring a barley offering because it represented the animal nature. And so the message is that there's no reason to be envious. There's no reason to try to get more, because that's kind of an animal characteristic, that you would envy more, that you would be jealous of what somebody has, that you would want to devour and consume more than you really could consume. So the idea here is your daily bread, because he's conditioning us for the reign of Messiah. The reign of Messiah will begin with all slates wiped clean. It'll be like the children of Israel in the wilderness. You had a tent, and you had your daily bread and your daily water. They were there. He brought you into Sukkot in the wilderness. There was a tent over you, even more than your own tent. He guaranteed you your shelter. He guaranteed you your food. He guaranteed you the clothing on your back would not wear out. Your sandals would not wear out. He guaranteed you your water. You may not get it as fast as you wanted, but it was guaranteed. Beyond that, there were no guarantees. He put, for 40 years, he puts everybody on an equal level. Just like the parable of the vineyard. If you came in late, you got the exact same daily bread as the person who came in early. In other words, if you were an early bird and you went out there collecting manna at the crack of dawn, and you collected and you collected and you hurried and you hurried and you didn't take a break and you didn't visit, you didn't talk, and you ended up with a whole bunch of manna, it didn't do you any good. Because the person who just slid in there, but basically at the last hour before it would melt, he's going to have enough to eat. You're going to have enough to eat. And you say, well, what's the point of working hard? Well, there's a point of working hard because there's different parables about rewards. This really isn't about the rewards of the kingdom. This is about being in the kingdom and receiving your inheritance, your portion, your assignment in the promised land. Ezekiel gives an example. Ezekiel 45, verse 7. It says, the prince shall have land on either side of the holy allotment and the property of the city, we're talking about Jerusalem, adjacent to the holy allotment and the property of the city on the west side toward the west and on the east side toward the east, and in length comparable to one of the portions from the west border to the east border. This shall be his land as a possession in Israel. And you'll notice in Ezekiel the borders are drawn differently than they are when Joshua brought the people into the land and assigned their portions by lot. The portions, as Ezekiel describes them, are very equal. They're just like straight lines, straight horizontal lines going across. It's just like equally divided. It says, this shall be his land as a possession in Israel. So my princes shall no longer oppress my people. And the idea here is that princes and kings and so forth, they basically exist to take advantage of people and collect taxes. And he says it's not going to be like that under the Prince Messiah. He says, they shall give the rest of the land to the house of Israel according to their tribes. In other words, his allotment is just this land adjacent to the Temple Mount. It's a specified amount, and then he's going to equally apportion it to the tribes. This is what the Lord God says. Enough, you princes of Israel, get rid of violence and destruction. Practice justice and righteousness. Remember the rider of the black horse carrying the scales of justice? He says, revoke your evictions of my people, declares the Lord God. Who gets evicted? Poor people. People who can't pay their rent. He says, stop that. You shall have accurate balances. There's our balances with the black horse again. An accurate ephah and an accurate bath. The ephah and the bath shall be the same quantity, so that the bath will contain 1/10 of a homer, and the ephah 1/10 of a homer. Their standard shall be according to the homer. So strangely here, remember we said in the previous program that a denarius was considered, the Roman denarius was considered the equivalent of 10 asses. This is really strange because when we're talking about a homer here in Ezekiel, kind of a chomer in Hebrew is the same root as chamor, a donkey. And in this case, the omer, it's 1/10 of an ephah. So you're seeing the two associations there. It's kind of odd that in the time of Yeshua there would be a link, a linguistic link between donkeys and a tenth. And as Ezekiel's writing here, there's little hints of the donkey and, of course, the tenth. So from this, the sages have a lot of comments, not just with Ezekiel, but some of these other passages that we've looked at. And they're not even taking into consideration, I don't think, the parable, Yeshua's parable of the vineyard and the workers hired at the last hour. But based on Ezekiel and the Psalms and lots of other scriptures, they write some pretty amazing things as they're discussing the footsteps of the Messiah or the birth pangs of the Messiah. They say it will be characterized by a period of equal measures. In other words, the commercialism that has existed for so long, where the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, they say as the Holy Land is resettled by the Messiah, and in particular as Jerusalem is constructed, everything will be according to the principle that we just read in Ezekiel of equal measures for everyone. There will be no favoritism. Everything will be balanced. Everything will be accurate. It's a time when they say that the chaos that precedes the arrival of Mashiach ben David is in order to bring about this condition of all the measures and all the prices being equal for everyone. And it will be equally difficult for everyone to get that daily bread. And they say actually that Mashiach ben David, the ruling king, he will not come until all the rates are accurately balanced. Now, we don't know if that's true or not. They're speculating again, looking at verses out of Deuteronomy, out of the prophets, out of the Psalms. But it goes back in the Torah to Deuteronomy 25:14, where it says, your house should not have two different weights for measurement, a large one and a small one. And then it's immediately followed by a perfect and just weight you should have. And so they take that little passage of the Torah as prophecy, and they say the term in your house, the perfect and just weight you should have, refers to the land of Israel. As it states, in order that your days be long upon the land. That somehow this balance, this justice that must take place, even in your commercial activity, is a prophecy that describes how the children of Israel will return to the land. And as they return, this is going to be a time when their days will be prolonged. There won't be this in and out, in and out. This particular return, their days will be prolonged. They will be there for that 1,000 years. They will be there for that eternity. And they say afterward it states that the Lord your God gives you. And they say this is with respect to a built-up Jerusalem, where it states in Psalm 122:7, peace be within your walls. When it was translated in the Targums, it was translated as peace regarding your possessions. In other words, it'll be characterized by a period like Yeshua was teaching in the parable of the vineyard. And he was making a point. He was making a very rabbinic point here about the time of the Messianic reign. He's saying, look, even though you've been working all day and you bore the heat of the sun, as it pertains to having a place of inheritance in the land and receiving that daily bread in the land, your brother is entitled to that security the same way that you are. You are all assured your daily bread. So don't be jealous. Don't be jealous of what you do or you don't have. Quit comparing yourself to your brother. And for this reason, the vineyard owner called the last first, so he could make this point to those who were hired first. And see, these last, they weren't even promised a specific amount. But they say that there's not going to be any durable peace regarding possessions in equal measures until the footsteps of Messiah. And they also quote, it says, every valley will be lifted up and every mountain and hill will be made low. In accord with what is written, in righteousness will you be established. Meaning in a way that is just and equal for everyone. As it states, I will make justice the line and righteousness the weight. So they're saying that's an example when he says, I'm going to lift up the valleys and the mountains are going to be leveled out. It's a prophecy of the equalization, the equal weights and measures, that every human being has an equal weight and measure in the promised land. And it says, with regard to settling Jerusalem, there's a section of it, of course, that's not going to be divided among the children of Israel because it's under the dominion directly of the prince for administration. But they say that there's going to be these equal districts that are apportioned out there that Ezekiel's talking about. And it says, for as the seed of peace, the vine will give forth her fruit. Again, that's saying that the land itself will give forth its fruit. And this fruit is the establishment of faithful people. Like the vineyard. You know, they're working in a vineyard. It symbolizes good fruit, a good harvest, a wonderful harvest. The harvest is so great, he has to go out and hire as many people as he can find to get it all in. Well, they say the people of Israel are going to be like this. They're going to be good fruit. But the foundation of it is going to be equity and justice. There won't be above and below. There will be equality. And it's going to be characterized, again, by a destruction of the previous economic system. What you expected, based on how you were brought up in that system, it may not be the same when the Lord of the vineyard comes. And they say, according to the plain meaning, equality means that each person must equate himself to the other members of his community. He must not regard himself as superior or greater than others, neither materially nor spiritually. And they say this is what we mean by Mashiach ben David will not come until all measurements are equal. What that means is until all the prices are equal. Kind of like 3 quarts of barley and 1 quart of wheat. It's all a denarius. The prices are all equal in their seasons. And so it's the same thing. You don't pay more because you're rich. You don't pay less because you're rich. Everybody is equal. And it says you have to, in order to understand this, it says you have to elevate yourself up from the level of an animal. Remember, they get as much as they can get, and they'll fight over it. They say materialism is the level of animals. It's the level of the beast, which really does fit very well with what we've been saying about the kingdom of the beast. It's based on materialism, power and control. And it says a person who remains stagnant, that is, who does not strive to rise spiritually and raise himself with superior achievements, is likened to an animal, and like wild beasts, is liable to commit any evil deed, God forbid. So you can see even John's description of the beast in Revelation, it has relevance here, especially with the black horse, that, you know, it's not going to be by your title It's not going to be by your social standing. It's not going to be by what's in your bank account, because everything's going to be designed to just level the playing field. And what's going to be important at this time is whether you try to rise spiritually. Did you try to improve yourself spiritually as you worked in the vineyard? Because you can see here the people who were there from the first hour, they saw how much those at the last hour received, and they were envious. And the vineyard owner says, don't be envious. That's an animal trait. Raise yourself spiritually while you're working in the vineyard. They also say righteousness means equality for everyone. And there's so much in the Torah in regard to your commercial transactions, not stealing from one another, not deceiving one another, not defrauding one another. All this is said to be prophecy of what Jerusalem and Israel will be like. Isaiah 127 says that Zion will be redeemed with justice, and those who return to her with charity. Returning to the land of Israel shouldn't be with an expectation of great rewards. It just should simply be, give us this day our daily bread. Give us this day our daily bread. That's enough. That's all I need. I don't need to be better than my brother or my sister. I don't need to have a bigger house, a bigger car, a bigger barn. I don't need a bigger anything. I just need to be part of those children of justice. I need to represent the best of Egypt when I come back, that I've worked on myself with the power of the Holy Spirit, and I hope that I have become an acceptable sacrifice. But I am not assessing a value on myself. That's for the vineyard owner. So even though that sounds a little scary, like he's wiping out the entire commercial system, well, in the time of the footsteps, the implication is, yes, this is what he will do. Is this the footsteps? That I don't know. But prepare like it is, and you won't be surprised. But as you look at these four horses of Revelation, just think of it as being a rebalancing. The famine, the plague, the wild beast, the sword, it's just preparing the earth for the days of Messiah. That's all that's happening here. And he will come when the earth is rebalanced, when the least is as much as the greatest, when the rich person has to settle for daily bread, when the poor person has daily bread. It's these products of Babylon and its beasts. These are the things that need to be removed to make way for the Shemitah year, to make way for the Yobel era, where everything is reset. Now, we're not saying the rewards of the kingdom are all the same. They're not. Yeshua tells parables, different parables about that. But this particular parable is about the mindset as you enter into the kingdom. Be happy. Be grateful that you receive your daily bread, and along with that, also be happy that your brother and your sister are receiving their daily bread, even if they did slide into home base at the last hour. Even if they did run in the gate right when it was closing and they brought repentance with them, be relieved for them, not envious that they get the same value in the Father's eyes that you do. He has his own ways of rewarding you. That's not a question. That says your deeds follow after you in Revelation. You're not going to be able to get away from those even if you wanted to. But he's saying acknowledge this principle first. When you get to the place in the wilderness where you're happy with your daily bread and your daily water and the clothes on your back and his sukkah over your head, then you understand what it means to return to this land of your inheritance, which is called in the Jewish sources, it's called the place of equally measured gardens. He's saying you'll have a place in the garden. You'll have a place in the resurrection. You will be resurrected. You will receive that denarius. And so be happy that anybody might be resurrected with you.